Okay, welcome to Chapter 2 podcast. I'm just going to highlight some of the important points of this chapter. There's a lot of points, so there are 3 sets of slides. The first set being the longest because there's a lot of examples. These are some of the topics, which is why it makes it so long. We're talking about getting foods that provide the right variety, which means that we can get the right nutrients. So you don't need to think about every individual vitamin and mineral each day if you get a variety of foods. Proportionality means talking about the actual serving size, like are we getting the right amount? And moderation is making sure that we just balance our calories that we need with the calories that we expend. We'll compare nutrient density with energy density. We'll look at some of the dietary guidelines, how we could plan a menu, what tools are there available, how to read labels, how to assess nutrition information. Just a lot of the basic things that we need to make choices. So this is the first general slide. We're talking about differences between these 3 aspects, the components of a healthy diet. One of the things that the slides will go into is that for variety, we have ways of getting better nutrients by picking foods that have enriched nutrients. So for instance, cereals have extra vitamins added. Getting colorful foods like dark greens and dark colorful oranges and reds will encourage us or be sure that we get plenty of phytochemicals. There's also something called functional foods, so that a lot of food industry companies will add extra fiber, extra nutrients to a food that might normally not be as good of a source. So we're getting better nutrition in some of the foods when we are able to read the labels and see what they've been adding. We'll also look at proportionality or balance with serving sizes. So it's pretty important when you do your 3-day recall, not only to record what, but how much of everything you ate, so you can determine your calorie base and your nutrient base. So we'll look at those serving sizes and then also talk about nutrition density. So we're looking for foods that have a lot of nutrients per calorie. So most of those slides deal with that topic, but here's what nutrient density really is. If you compare 2 foods that are similar with the same calories, these both have very similar number of calories. You can see the nutrient contribution is much higher in milk than it is in soda. If you actually want to do the mathematical computations, you take one food, 100 grams of one food, you look at one nutrient, and you look at your particular calorie need. So each person has a different calorie. That's this estimated energy requirement. We'll talk about this in another chapter. So you're going to find out, based on the calories, how much of this particular nutrient the food has. So if you would talk about Greek yogurt and you're looking at the calcium, you start with 100 grams of yogurt, which is not a lot, it's just 3.5 ounces. The calories in 100 grams and the calcium in 100 grams. So you would divide the calories by your recommended, so this person needs 2,000 calories. So when they do that ratio, you get 22.7, and then the top part of that ratio would be the amount of calcium you're getting for that amount of yogurt. And that gives you a ratio. So this we find out the density is 4.8, which is a good density between a range which is recommended. So that's how you could do nutrient density, but we are just going to look at it not mathematically, but just in general. Does, like this picture we just looked at, does the food have, more nutrients than another food per calorie for the same amount of calories? So nutrient density we talked a lot about. It's a little hard to compare. So for instance here, if you want to improve a diet with nutrient density, so puffed wheat, I don't even know if you find that anymore, but puffed wheat, white rice, grape drink. Drink usually implies it's very low in nutrients. So the alternatives would be to get real juice, 100% juice, or to eat fresh grapes because that gives you the vitamins and the fiber. Of course, getting a whole grain bread would be helpful. The same thing here, we're going with rice, corn, iced tea. You could get fruit, you can have whole grain rice. You might pick a vegetable that has a darker green, dark orange, like maybe sweet potato. So those are some examples of how you could improve a menu to get more nutrient density. Another topic in this section is looking at what counts as a serving. So when you're recording, like if you want to have the right proportions, you want to know what a serving is. And there's a whole section here about how we have included much higher serving sizes, larger serving sizes over the years. So what used to think was a muffin is now 3 times the size of it was a muffin. So this is a standard serving size that we can use. There's some differences people have different ideas about what a serving is, but basically, one serving would be a cup of fruit, or a cup of juice, or a half cup of dried fruit, or a slice of bread, a half cup of cooked pasta or rice, a cup of milk, 2 ounces of cheese. If it's processed cheese, you notice that the serving size is larger because there's usually less nutrients than a natural cheese. Protein is the more complicated. We look at this in another chapter, but that one you just notice you have different options. You don't have to just eat meat products, but if you're not going to eat meat products, that 1 ounce, you could instead have had 1 egg. There's the same amount of protein in 1 egg as there is in 1 ounce of meat, or 1 tablespoon of peanut butter, or a quarter cup of cooked dry beans, or a half ounce of nuts. So these are substitutions you could make for that 1 ounce of meat and would give you the same amount of protein. So those are some examples of serving sizes. And then if you want to look at different plans, there's lots of ways you can just break down, what is your best plan for nutrient diet. So for instance, you can think about this healthy eating plan. There's also the My Plate online. There's a vegetarian, a Mediterranean. I know one of my students last semester really liked the idea of the Mediterranean diet. So we're just thinking of getting, all 4 food groups plus a beverage. This one doesn't have dairy as the beverage like the other ones do. Like this has dairy. This one suggests low-fat dairy plus water. So the Mediterranean diet recommendation is obviously, you can see there's more fruits and vegetables. On this plan, the vegetables and fruits still have. Okay, there's still fruits and vegetables, but you notice the whole grains. Okay, this does the whole grain. This adds the nuts and includes the legumes and fish, and tries to remind you that the protein isn't just, a breakdown of the protein might be helpful to remind you of the other sources. So Mediterranean diet or a vegetarian diet, this was a lot of whole grains, a lot more beans and lentils, and then again, including the seeds. So there's lots of ways you can decide how you might want to break up what you eat in a day. And then as far as the My Plate, here you can see this, the standard we've been using is grains, protein, fruits, vegetables, and dairy. And then you can look and see the advantages of My Plate. It's kind of a nice system. It's easy to remember. I think some semesters I had people actually take a picture of one of their days or one of their meals to see if it matches the My Plate. Like how close does your meal come to what this standard is? And it might not look the same, but you can kind of see that there should be a lot of crossover. So one of the things about the My Plate that is good is that it helps you teach variety, and it helps you see the it's interactive. You can use it for any age group. If you have a child in the house, or if you're pregnant, you can apply it. It shows variety and includes plant sources and so forth. Limitations, it doesn't really give you overall calories, doesn't say anything about serving sizes or how many servings. It's just a very basic tool, but it's somewhere to start at least. Okay, so that's basically what this part is about. Here's more on serving sizes. Again, if you want to see another list like this is used often for diabetics. So people that have diabetes also need to be careful what their serving sizes are. So they, as you can see from here, they have a system called exchanges. So any of the foods, they're particularly interested in carbohydrates because that's what's going to affect their blood sugar level. So all these different foods have this much carbohydrate. So as long as they get the right serving size of a fruit or a vegetable or a milk, they know they're getting this much carbohydrate. So they have to be particularly good at counting their carbohydrates. So here's a starch, 1 slice of bread is 1 carbohydrate exchange. 1 exchange of carbohydrate is 15 grams. So every starch, if they eat the right amount, has 15 grams of carbohydrate. Every fruit, if they eat the right amount, has 15 grams of carbohydrates. And milk has 12 grams of carbohydrate if they eat the right amount. So usually it's 1 cup of milk, a little less maybe of yogurt. So they have to follow these kind of recommendations to get, rather than counting up gram after gram, we can just categorize food in the carbohydrate group and understand the serving size. So this is the plan they might use. They might have to write down the exchanges they need for a day, and figure out how they're going to break that down into the meals that they might eat. And I think we did this exercise here. You'll see that this person needed these exchanges to get the right calories, and then they had to figure out how to distribute those throughout the day to get all the exchanges checked off. So that's what some of the diabetic might do, and it's also useful for weight control. People like the exchanges for weight control diets as well because it helps you keep track. But I think that the Fit Day is very helpful if you want to ever do that as well. So that's what this chapter is. It's looking at, or this part of this chapter is looking at the variety, the density, the dietary guidelines that are mentioned in here. You'll see that, and some planning tools. Part 2 and 3 go through some of these other topics, which we'll talk about next. Okay, thanks.